I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guests tonight are Griffin and Fatu. Both of them have been trying to unionize Amazon warehouses. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Okay, so I think I'm going to start with you, Griffin, because it was your story that I heard about. Actually, Shama Sawant reached out to me. For those who don't know, Shama Sawant actually started a worker strike back. I talked about that on the show when it first was announced. And Griffin, as I understand, you were a part of that as well. I have been informed that while you were a part of unionizing efforts for Amazon, you actually have been fired from the location in Kentucky. Can you tell everyone, how did those events transpire? And then also, can you tell everyone a little bit about that particular warehouse in Kentucky and why that one is so significant?
Yeah, so Amazon KCVG is Amazon's air hub for their air freight network in North America and globally. We have 40 flights every 24 hours where cargo is brought in from planes into the building and sorted, sent back out on planes, sent to trucks and the rest to deliver, their overnight delivery, their 2-day delivery. And I've worked at Amazon for 3 years, moved over to the air hub in 2021. And second year I was there, the company cut our seasonal peak pay. So the first year I was there, we got an extra $2 an hour during peak season, during the holidays. Next year they decided to claw it back because we don't have a union, right? We can't actually have a say in maintaining these things. And my coworkers and myself started a petition to bring back our peak pay and to make it a permanent cost of living raise. Just as it is now, inflation was out of control. The price of basic goods, gas, food, rent, everything was skyrocketing. And, from the jump, our coworkers were saying, yeah, it'd be great to get our seasonal pay, but what we really need is a union that can fight for things like $30 an hour, 180 hours of paid time off, and having union representation. So, we took it from there. And last March, we launched our union drive as Amazon Labor Union KCVG. Since then, we've collected well over 1,000 cards. We also had over 1,000 of our coworkers sign on to a petition demanding translation rights for immigrant workers, who maybe aren't as proficient as English as they'd like to be, to force the company to offer translation in any disciplinary conversations, and to fight back against discrimination in the workplace because, there are a lot of especially Senegalese, Congolese workers in the workplace who, sometimes are brought into their manager's office and not even really given an explanation as to why they're being disciplined or in some cases fired. And that's, how I met Fatu through that important work of building out our organizing committee among immigrant workers, but also in their communities. These are very tight-knit communities where people help each other and where people talk about issues at work. That's where we met Fatu and have really developed out, I'd say in the last 5 or 6 months, a strong community arm of this campaign that's so essential. These are our communities. These businesses rely on workers to have money to spend at the grocery, at the market, and whatever else. So we're happy to have Fatu by our side to fight with us.
Now, I saw this article here. I want to share this with everyone. It says, We know our rights. Amazon KCVG Air Hub workers begin to vote to ratify union constitution. And I want to highlight this piece right here that says members of the Amazon labor union KCVG kicked off a 3-week voting period Saturday to ratify the union's constitution. And here are some of the benefits here that it lays out. Should the union reach that stage, they plan to make the following demands, among others: $30 an hour starting wage, 180 hours of paid time off, union representation at disciplinary meetings, and monthly dues would be $30 an hour. So I want to pass it to you, Fatu. What piqued your interest in reference to helping people start to organize a union at Amazon? Why were you particularly interested in this effort? I think you have to unmute.
So, like Griffin said, a few months ago, I was helping the new coming, get their paperwork with immigration, get their housing ready, and we always, of course, got to get them jobs so they can pay for everything that we got set up for them. So I've been doing this for 10 years or more, helping around this around the community. And that's how I end up a job as a recruiter. And I did that for 7 years. And we didn't have no problem getting these people to work. All the warehouse was hiring them because they have a voice. I was behind the scene telling the managers that they need to hire these people, get a lead in French, get the managers in French so we can get these people in, because we have hundreds of Congolese just come in at that time, and you guys need a worker. But like I realized, as soon as I left the job, all of those managers and most of them was fired, and companies start saying that they cannot hire any French speaking. So even though I had another job that is not related to the job they were looking for, I was willing to go with them and help them translate and do everything at the job site so they can have something to feed their family. So I started going to HR in Amazon and talking to them, and they give us time. We were looking for, translation and stuff. I say, it's not that hard. I have so many people I can send right now in your office to get translation. So they keep putting me on hold. And finally, the last person I took there 6 months ago, I was going and met the union people at the street with sign. They was getting ready to do a family day. I'm like, what is this? For me, they were working for Amazon because I was not familiar with union at all. I said, you guys work for Amazon? What is going on? Why not they not hiring immigrants? So they showed me this petition that they do. It was thousands of workers, immigrant and no immigrant sign to get translation. And Amazon was ignoring it. So I say, well, I know leaders in this community. I've been in the United States for 21 years, and I've been in Kentucky for the last 13 years. And I work with a lot of leaders, Congolese, Senegalese, Malian, mosque, churches. So I can get you in contact with them so they can talk to their members that work at KCVG to back you guys out. With that community relation we have so many immigrants that were scared because Amazon was telling them about all this lie with the union busters, and they end up being really stepping in and helping out to help the workers at Amazon to have a union.
Okay. And then from what I understand, Griffin, you were fired from Amazon in Kentucky, and you believe it's because you were helping with organizing union efforts, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I worked there for about 2.5 years at that particular site, and have been involved, early on in the organizing efforts, going back to the fall in 2022 when we started the peak pay petition. And the company is afraid that their workforce might support a union at KCVG. And, we have a lot of support that we're activating, well over 1,000 cards signed, workers getting organized into organizing committees on their shifts, various departments on, in all corners of the facility. And they're scared because they know that we're preparing to file for an NLRB election, and that, we know that's only a first step or maybe a second step in this fight for a union at KCVG. Amazon is one of the most anti-union employers in the world. They've, marshaled out dozens and dozens of high-paid union busters and consultants to come out and scare workers and confuse them about what a union is. And that's part of why we've taken steps to draft our independent union constitution and make decisions on, what, should the elected leadership in the union be subject to recall. Overwhelmingly, our coworkers say yes. And, deciding on dues, we voted overwhelmingly to accept $30 a month in dues. The union busters say all kinds of things about that. And, with my firing, it's not about me, it's about firing somebody at the center of this campaign. And the reason they gave me for my firing even was that I asked if I could attend some of the anti-union captive audience meetings that they're holding at the workplace all hours of the day. I myself and other pro-union workers were kind of suspiciously not invited to these meetings. And just for simply asking to attend these meetings, I was fired. They said that I was self-assigning by simply asking a manager for a couple minutes if I could attend one of these captive audience meetings. And about a month later, I was told that I was being fired for that reason, which, I think says a lot more about how they feel about the situation now than it does, pinning it all on one worker or something. They want to scare our coworkers from getting involved in the union and fighting for what we need.
Well, one other question I have, I'm not completely sure about the work laws in Kentucky, but isn't that considered to be retaliation? And I ask this question because I've interviewed a couple of Starbucks employees on this show before, and one of them was fired because they were trying to start a union at their Starbucks location. And I asked the same question, isn't that considered retaliation?
Right. So, Kentucky's a right to work state, right? So, I think people will get a bit confused. It's also an at-will employment state, like many places in the U.S. According to the letter of the law, your employer can fire you, end your contract of employment for any legal reason. They, technically can't fire you for an illegal reason, like for supporting a union, for banding together your coworkers to fight for improvements in the workplace. But, officially, that's not the reason I was given for my firing. So, these companies engage in illegal union busting, and they try to cover it up as best as they can. But it's pretty it's pretty unthinkable that the reason I was given for my firing was explicitly for asking to attend these anti-union meetings, and I think it shows that the company's desperate about the situation.
So one of the other question I have is, have any of you, and not just this particular warehouse in Kentucky, but have any of you that have been fired for trying to unionize, have any of you collectively, banded together and reached out to an attorney?
Yeah, so our campaign has legal counsel. We've exhausted every avenue as far as filing unfair labor practice charges against my firing, through the NLRB. But what it really comes down to is building power in the workplace, because ideally, if we were well organized enough and management fired or targeted pro-union workers, we would stop working and we would demand that those workers be reinstated. But we're not there yet, obviously. To organize a workplace of over 4,000 workers is a real fight, and I think they fired me because they knew that it would have a chilling effect in the workplace, and to some degree it has, but it's also motivated just as many workers to fight back. And so, we're using, talking about my firing within the larger context of a lack of job security at Amazon, where, You could be fired for a small safety issue. You could be fired for going negative on your unpaid time that they give you to manage your time. So yeah, it's firing season at Amazon. I'm just one of a few hundred that's been fired at this facility in the last several months, and we're going to fight back, and we're going to continue to fight for a union at KCBG.
Has ALU reached out in reference to this particular situation, or have you heard from the ALU?
Yeah, so we've had several of their key organizers from their election out to help us organize at the facility. Bree Masilla, Connor Spence, and others who, are really foundational members of that effort. And we took up their demand for a $30 an hour wage early on, and we think it's really positive that it's not just ALU that's talking about 30 now. It's the Teamsters at Amazon. It's other workers in the logistics industry, fighting, alongside the auto workers that are moving into action in the South to organize some of these EV plants. And so, we're filing as an independent union with our own constitution, but we don't want to be isolated. We want to join the ranks of thousands of workers around this country, that are moving into action and getting organized for better.
That was another question that I had. Is there any effort to organize, I guess, with the UAW and other unions that are striking or making demands right now, and to make this more of a bigger movement, so to speak? Because I know the UAW actually mentioned they were thinking about starting some type of general strike at least a couple years down the road. I think they said by 2018 they want to have a full general strike going. Has there been any effort to reach out to some of the other unions, particularly in that area, and band together as well?
Yeah, we got together with other union. We organized launching that article you was reading just now. It was about our launching in February 3rd. We have support from local Teamster. We have support from other organizing union came in and back us 100%. We have union from Canada coming. So everybody was trying to reach out to us and trying to see how they can help us and how they can support us, which is an amazing job, because with Amazon we need it all to win.
Right. And I think sometimes people may not think about this, but if you're ordering something from Amazon, especially if you have Amazon Prime, you're getting that item within 2 days, right? Or supposed to be within 2 days. Well, in order for that to happen, that means they have to have a lot of people working and working long hours. And I heard stories before from Amazon employees about them not being able to have significant breaks. I had stories from Amazon employees where they had to urinate in bottles. So I think people really need to understand that sometimes when you're trying to get that quick convenience, that is at someone else's expense.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say too, with that, we've got members of our organizing committee who've worked at Amazon for many years, 10 plus, 14 plus years. And, we want to be respected and paid a decent living. I like my job on the ramp, driving a cargo tug, working around the planes, but we're not paid fairly, and there's no clear work standards. There's a lot of potential for serious injury working around aircraft, handling, 4,000, 5,000 pound freight canisters. And at the end of the day, we should have some guarantee, as much as humanly possible, that you're going to go home, the same way you came in. And we see increasingly at Amazon that, the more flights they add, month to month, building this place out, it's massive investment for them. $1.5 billion. And it's only really a third of the way built. They have a lot more to do. They want to get to the point where they're not just doing 40 flights a day, they're doing 100 flights a day every 24 hours. And the pace of that is backbreaking at times, especially during peak. If you're not careful, you can get sucked up into a jet engine. You can have your hair sucked up into a conveyor belt on the ramp. There's a lot that can go wrong. And, when the planes have to go out, all those safety concerns go out the window.
Oh, we lost Griffin.
Yeah.
He'll probably come back. Oh, here he is. Is this, I would imagine, is this the largest employer in that area?
It's one of the largest, yeah. This is like the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky metro region. So, University of Cincinnati Hospital is very big. Kroger is very big out here. But yeah, Amazon's, I think, the third or fourth largest employer in this metro region. So it's a big deal for this economy here.
So that's part of the problem that I've noticed, especially going to some of the rural towns in the United States where it's obvious that the retail market has pretty much been shut down, right? So like you see these shopping plazas that are now abandoned because Amazon came into town, or Amazon warehouse came into town. And now that is the quote unquote employer in the town. And so the people kind of have nowhere else to. I make the same argument about Boeing in South Carolina. There's certain parts in South Carolina where Boeing kind of is the employer. So it's like people don't really have that many alternatives.
Mhm.
And the problem is that Amazon has become so large that it's made it difficult for other retailers, even chain retailers, to stay in business. I see shopping malls closing. I see stores in shopping malls closing because they'll tell you people are buying clothes online at Amazon, or people are getting everything at Amazon or at Walmart. And so it makes it harder for medium-sized businesses, even some of the chains. It makes it more difficult for smaller businesses to actually thrive when you have this large competitor that pretty much sells everything. And they also bought Whole Foods.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, on the other side of that too, this area is interesting because there's a lot of rural life in this area still, right? Smaller towns, further south in Kentucky, where people drive an hour and a half to work every day. There's still a lot of family farming. I mean, there's at least 3 people on our organizing committee that have to go to work at Amazon, organize the fight, and then go help out with the family farm still. And, a lot of those businesses are suffering in the same way, because all these supply chains are becoming more integrated internationally. And, it's, and just not having the time off, spend with your family is a huge issue for our coworkers. And that all adds up, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, Fatu.
So when we have what they know that they are needed sometime, and they know that the workers are coming to them because, of course, when they open, like you say, a lot of the warehouse closes and those workers went to Amazon. So in this meeting that they have call open meeting to everyone to come and tell, what they want, HR open door policy. Some of the immigrants told me if they go there and start telling them, what they need, they well, this is not for everybody. If you think this job is not for you, you might just, look for somewhere. Literally they telling them, you can quit. We don't care, and it's just became ridiculous for these people who just get. And then I always tell them, you guys have some small people there and you guys don't know it. They just don't speak the language. But we have lawyers in there. We have engineering in the warehouse. One of our lead used to be a professor in Africa, but they have to run because, war or something. They have to come here and leave their job behind. Very small people. So don't just consider them dumb because they don't speak the language. We having problem with Amazon and we have to fight for it.
That's right. And another thing I want to mention too is that HR, oh boy, I learned many years ago that HR is always there to protect the company. They tell you during orientation that they're there for you. But the moment you go to HR and you voice any type of concern, remember, those people are paid to protect the company at all costs. So they're not really for the employee. What are the next steps in reference to that particular location in Kentucky? And for those who are just joining, that Amazon location in Kentucky is considered to be an Amazon hub.
Well, yeah, quickly on your point about HR, I mean, some of the first full meetings that workers have been invited to that are in French are these union busting meetings, So, yeah, HR will provide translation when it's it's a priority for this company to smash the union drive, but not when, they need their training or anything else on the job. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, last year we fought around these demands, 30 an hour, 180 hours of paid time off, organized around translation. Now we're finishing up the process of drafting and ratifying this constitution. And yeah, the next step for us is to file for an NLRB election and to force this company to come to the bargaining table to recognize our union and ultimately to prepare for a strike at KCVG because, as we've seen in New York and other efforts to organize Amazon, we're going to have to drag them to the bargaining table. And ultimately, that means withholding our labor. That means, stopping the planes from coming in and out, and really forcing their hand to take this fight to the next level and to fight for a contract.
And where can people go to support your efforts?
Yeah, so you can find us on social media, Amazon Labor Union KCVG. And you can also go to our website, unionizeamazonkcvg.org. If you go to /donate, we really encourage people to donate $30 to help us fight for a $30 an hour starting wage.
Yeah. So guys, those of you watching, instead of donating to politicians, donate to these efforts to unionize at Amazon. I always tell people to put your money to better use.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Griffin, and thank you and the best of luck to both of you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thanks for having us on.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. Yes, they got to keep up the good fight there in reference to unionizing. Amazon is very large and powerful and they have a lot of money. And so I always tell people, again, instead of donating to campaigns, you do what you want with your money. But instead of donating to campaigns and hoping that this politician is going to pan out for you, donate your money to causes like that, right? Like worker rights and unionization, those types of things. You put your money to good use. All right, guys, we do have interesting stories to discuss tonight. Let me go ahead and share that thumbnail first. We'll give a shout out to patrons and then we'll go ahead and dive right in. Let's do the damn thing. All right. Tonight, we are discussing Matt Taibbi Obama shocker. And you will notice in that picture, there's Matt Taibbi and there's Obama and there's also Hillary Clinton. We have a bombshell of a story. Good God. And I saw this yesterday. I was like, oh my God, here we go. We're also going to discuss RFK Jr. attack. Now, this is a two-part story here. There's the issue with the Super Bowl ad, and there's also this lawsuit that seems to be coming his way from the DNC. We're also going to discuss Joe Biden panders to Black voters. You'll notice there's a bucket of fried chicken next to Joe Biden. Oh my God, you could not be more cringe. We're going to get into that story. And of course, for Tu and Griffin, we're just here to talk about the Amazon union trouble. I'm also going to discuss one more story, which is great news coming out of Michigan. So if you live in the state of Michigan, you are not going to want to miss that story. I think that will make you very happy. Very happy. All right. We're also going to give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're out here doing the damn thing and holding down the fort. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. We can't forget about those Sabbies. And also members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Adela Barcia, Borakina Libre. What beautiful names tonight. And Christine Bark. Thank you. Thank you all so much for keeping the lights on around me. And I can change out these batteries in this mouse too. Okay, guys, let's go ahead to the comments here and then we'll get started with our first story. Thank you so much for the super chat. Stop sniffing kids, Joe. I feel sorry for Fannie. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about the Fannie Willis story because I haven't seen all of the trial today. I was able to watch a couple of clips here and there, so I need a little bit more time, but we'll dive into that tomorrow. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. Belated happy Valentine's Day, Sabby. Thank you so much, Sparky. That is really sweet. Happy Valentine's to you as well. We're going to get started with our first story. For those of you that watch the Super Bowl, and if you're like me and you really like to see the ads during the Super Bowl, you may have noticed that there was an ad for RFK Jr.'s campaign. Now, apparently that ad actually caused quite a stir, and there's actually a poll question there pinned to the top of the live chat. If you can answer that question. I looked at the poll right before we went live. It's really interesting that some of the responses there. But let me put this up here. We're going to start with the ad first. So I'm going to show you the ad. You can let me know what you think about this ad. And then I'm going to dive in. So part of the criticism that has come from this ad is the fact that it was basically an old school Kennedy ad from JFK days, RFK days. And instead of having, of course, JFK or RFK, they inserted RFK Jr. in that place instead. So I kind of saw this ad as someone who grew up during that time was a sense of nostalgia for them, right? Let's show the ad. And I want you to be honest what you think about this. Here it is.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do?
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
American Values 2024 is responsible for the contents of this advertisement.
Okay. So that's the ad. Now, again, I think if you were alive during that time when JFK ran or RFK ran, for you, it represents a sense of nostalgia, right? I was not alive during that time. I think a lot of you watching me were not alive during that time. And so the question that I had when I saw this ad was, who are they trying to appeal to? Who are they trying to reach? Are they trying to reach those older voters that remember this ad for JFK, right? That's what I would think. And then I said to myself, why aren't they trying to reach like the younger voters, right? So to me, it's just, it wasn't like my cup of tea. RFK Jr. is not my candidate anyway, but it wasn't my cup of tea. And I think it's just because I just don't get it really. Again, like I said, because it represents that type of nostalgia that I just was not alive to have seen. Right now, here's the problem. Apparently, RFK Jr. is claiming that he was not responsible for this ad. He said that the American Values PAC actually created that ad and that he was not aware of it. So technically, when something is a part of your campaign, the campaign is going to be seen as responsible for it, regardless if another PAC created it or you say you didn't know about it. The campaign is going to be seen as liable for that PAC. That's just how it goes. Now, that's a super PAC that created that ad. And if there ever was another reason for me to try to convince people not to have a super PAC, that could be another one right there. Them doing things that you may not have approval over. However, there was some pushback in reference to what RFK Jr. said. And one of the pushback was the fact that he said he didn't approve this, didn't know about it, but he retweeted it. And actually, until this morning, this was actually pinned to the top of his Twitter page. So he retweeted this here. It says, "Our momentum is growing. It's time for an independent president to heal the divide in our country." And you can see it's shared here from American Values 2024. That is the super PAC. If you go to his Twitter page now, you will see there is a different pin message there now. It says, my new book is out. So it's really interesting. A lot of people were saying that Marianne Williamson was selling a book. Yeah, I said, yeah. And I also said RK Jr. was also selling a book. So you see, this goes both ways. So he actually swapped out that pinned tweet. So that tweet was pinned. It's not pinned anymore. Now, I want you to hear what he said to Jesse Waters as he explains, about the Super Bowl ad. And he actually issued an apology. Apparently, there were people that were upset, family members that were upset about that ad because it represents something different to them. There were, I think, some people in the RK Jr. campaign will take a look at this. Some people thought it was a great idea. Some people thought it was not a good idea. But we're going to get into his explanation here because, again, like I said, that ad actually caused quite a stir.
RFK Jr., is Joe Biden fit to be president?
Well, I think anybody can make up their mind about that as well as I can. I hope that if he has the kind of cognitive challenges that the special counsel indicated he has, and if I were in that position, a member of my family or staff would approach me and assist me in gently stepping down.
So is that the role for Jill Biden to play right now?
So right now he's talking about Joe Biden's mental acuity.
What did you say?
Was that the role for Jill?
I think she should do it. And I think what President Biden, if President Biden wants to run, because these issues have now been raised in a very, very public settings, he needs to come out and have unscripted discussions with voters. He needs to have a debate. Tell us what he's going to do about closing the border. Tell us what he's with the American people, what he's going to do about restoring the middle class, about ending the wars, the forever wars around the world, about unraveling corporate capture and all these issues that, are critical to our country right now. And we need a president who is on the ball, somebody who we all trust to answer that phone call at 3:00 in the morning and to handle the complexities and the nuance of the kind of crises that face our country at a very, very critical point in history. And I think he needs to show people that he can do that. And the best way to do that is in an open debate.
Yeah, and that's tough for him because it's a catch-22. The more he goes out there to show he has what it takes, the more everybody sees that he doesn't. I was watching the game last night, and all of a sudden I saw a brilliant ad by your campaign, or maybe a super PAC. Let's watch this.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do?
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
Did you guys catch the part in that ad where it says a man who's, it says, and young enough to do? That kind of is interesting because they were talking about Joe Biden's age and whether or not he's up for the task for re-election. So it's interesting because you have that in that ad as well.
So that was a classic Kennedy family ad that you repurposed, and then you apologized for running that ad. Why'd you do that?
Well, I know. As you know, Jesse, there's a couple of members of my family that do not support my run for president. And I knew that ad was not run by our campaign. It was run by the super PAC. And I was delighted to see it. I was sitting with Cheryl and my kids and a lot of other family members watching the Super Bowl when that popped up. So you can imagine my surprise. The super PAC's not allowed to talk about those things with us.
Pause. So you see one of the problems with super PACs? It's not just the money issue. They're not even allowed to discuss, I guess, what type of ads they're going to run with the campaign. Just another reason, folks, for you not to want to use a super PAC. This is why I say no super PACs, also because of the money reason, but then that lack of control that you have over those super PACs.
But I knew when I saw the ad, I loved the ad, but I knew that it would irritate some members of my family because it used some of that old Kennedy iconography. So I don't apologize for the ad, but I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And
let me tell you what I think here. So I think if you leave the Democratic Party, which RFK Jr. did, the super PAC, to me, I don't understand. I guess, the sense of nostalgia, but in my opinion, if you're looking to do an ad for the Super Bowl, which, by the way, these ads are like $7 million for like 30 seconds, $7 million for like 30 seconds, right? Why use a Kennedy ad from, JFK, et cetera, who was a Democrat? He ran through the Democratic Party. He won through the Democratic Party. You want to do something that signifies that RFK really broke away from the duopoly and is running as an independent. So if I'm on the marketing team, I get it. They realize it's kind of, they're like, oh, to be catchy, and people who were alive during that time, they'll remember this and recognize it. I get that, but it also doesn't appeal to a lot of people who were not alive during that time. A lot of us just sitting back like, I don't know what this is, but okay. But at the same time, it was kind of weird to me that you're going to show this Democrat nostalgic ad, but RFK Jr. broke away from that and is running as an independent. So I think you should have used something that signified that breaking away from the duopoly, instead of using something that was a part of the Democratic Party before. That's just my opinion.
And it's an easy thing for me to do. To say it's not the ad I would have run if I had chosen it. I'm very happy they did it. I think it was very creative, but I also knew it would hurt people, and I don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, well, I hurt members of my family every night on Jesse Waters Primetime and on the 5. That's what happens when you live in a diverse political family. RFK Jr., thank you so much for joining us.
So he did apologize for the ad. Like, for me, this is another thing where I feel like sometimes RFK Jr. apologizes for things that he really doesn't need to apologize for. And then there are times where I feel like there are things he should apologize for, but he won't, like obviously the Israel-Gaza issue. Now, I want to show you what some people thought about it. Kim Iverson came in here and she said, just saw RFK Jr.'s Super Bowl commercial. Smart move for his campaign. So Kim Iverson thought it was smart. And then we get into Ben Shapiro. Now, I want you to hear what he said about RFK Jr.'s campaign. And also, he brings up something else in reference to political Super Bowl ads. It was interesting. The only political ad I saw during the Super Bowl from an actual candidate was RFK Jr. Maybe I missed one. If I missed one in the chat, let me know. Might have been when I went to the restroom or something. But I don't remember seeing a political ad for Joe Biden. I didn't see one for Donald Trump. I didn't see one for Jill Stein or Cornel West or anyone else that's running for president. Like I said, $7 million for a 30-second spot. So it costs a lot of money to do that. But I was actually surprised that neither Trump or Biden had a Super Bowl ad, because they do have the money to do that. Listen to what Ben Shapiro said about it.
That was the RFK ad. So there was a super PAC for RFK who put out an RFK ad during the Super Bowl. So let me first state, this is super smart. This is really, really, really smart. The reason this is really smart is because Joe Biden forewent the honorary Super Bowl interview that every incumbent president gets. And the reason he did that is because he's too old for the job and he can no longer function, as we saw last week, as we'll get into in just a moment. And Donald Trump didn't take out an ad. I don't know why Trump didn't take out an ad. This would be like a perfect time for Trump to take out an ad. I assume maybe the people broadcasting the Super Bowl didn't want Trump to take out an ad.
What do you guys think about that? Do you think the reason that there wasn't an ad for Biden or Trump is because their campaign or whatever maybe said, no, not a good idea? Do you think it's because actually the Super Bowl didn't think it was a good idea? I wonder about that.
But the fact is that RFK did. And this ad is very smart. The reason this ad is very smart is because, again, it is seeking normalcy. So what the RFK Super PAC understands is that what Americans basically want is everybody to calm the F down. That's kind of what most Americans want at this point. All they want is to know that they go to work, they're going to take home the vast majority of their money, they're going to be able to raise their families without being victimized by street crime, that they're not going to have their boys turned into girls or whatever, that like they just want a baseline level of normalcy. That's what most Americans are looking for at this point.
So I didn't get that from the ad. I didn't get that from the ad. That's interesting that he thinks that it represents a part of normalcy. And I say this because remember, that's Kennedy family ads. You think about JFK. JFK actually broke away from some of those norms that the deep state wanted to stay in place. JFK, remember, he wanted to get us out of some of these foreign conflicts. He didn't want to escalate some of those things. Actually, when it came to Cuba, remember, he came back and he said, nope, that wasn't a good idea, right? Remember what we found out about JFK in reference to Israel. Remember, we found out that JFK actually did not like the fact that Israel was acquiring nuclear weapons. He did not like that. Remember, he kept trying to go visit the facility, and then next thing you know, he was assassinated. So that never actually happened. He also did not like where Zionism was heading. That was another thing that was discovered by Mint Press News. He didn't like that. He also thought that the parent organization of AIPAC should have registered as a foreign agent. So I would argue to Ben Shapiro, the reason why, or one of the reasons why JFK was assassinated is because he did not represent that type of normalcy. Remember, before there was Bernie Sanders, even JFK started to talk about how people should have health care, how everyone should have health care. So JFK did have some of those, what you would call Democrat, socialist, ideas of his own. So think about that for a second. So I didn't get the impression that he got that it represents some type of normalcy or whatever. But I do think it represents a sense of nostalgia for a lot of people. I also, when I saw that ad, I thought about, this is a way for him to basically run off of the Kennedy name. Something similar that Joseph Kennedy III did here in Massachusetts when he primary challenged Ed Markey. And what a lot of people may not be aware of, if you weren't paying attention to that race, obviously Ed Markey was the older candidate, but Ed Markey actually had more progressive ideas than Joseph Kennedy III. And Joseph Kennedy really didn't bring many ideas to the table when he was debating him. He was basically just running on the fact that he was a Kennedy. Now, Joseph Kennedy III lost that race, and he lost that race because the youth turnout actually showed up and supported Ed Markey instead. Interesting, huh? Interesting. But it's not just that ad. There's something else happening here. And I don't know if you guys have heard about this. So RFK Jr. is not running through the Democratic Party anymore. However, the DNC has filed a federal complaint against RFK Jr. They are trying to prevent him from getting any type of ballot access. Now, I know he already has ballot access in Utah. He's not running through the Democratic Party, and they still went ahead and did this anyway. That's why I say we don't really have a true democracy in this country. I want to bring in this clip here from Fox Business, and we dive into this idea of playing dirty. RFK Jr. supporter rips the DNC federal complaint. Here we go.
The DNC, Democratic National Committee, filing a Federal Election Commission complaint against RFK Jr.'s super PAC's effort to put him on some key state ballots, about 10 states. Reaction now from the American Values co-founder, Mark Gordon. Mark, first of all, I got to get this straight because it's all so confusing. After spending a lot of time, at least a year, the DNC tried to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot. Now they're essentially suing you guys in front of the Federal Elections Commission because you're trying to get on some ballots. Where's the fairness in all of this?
There is no fair. This is what I've been saying before. When a lot of us were upset with the DNC rigging the election against Bernie Sanders, some of my friends that were not down with the Bernie, movement, some of my friends said, oh, well, it is what it is. Like, what are you going to do? Like, obviously, people want to be in the middle. They want someone that's closer to the middle. They don't want someone that's far right. They don't want someone that's far left. And they just shrugged it off. But it's really interesting because now you see they're applying this to other people as well. And this was the warning that I tried to give about that. You didn't have to be a fan of Bernie Sanders. You didn't have to like Bernie Sanders' policies. But the fact that the DNC could just come in and just rig the election like that, everyone should have been frustrated that that was happening. And the fact that the DNC lawsuit happened and the judge said that the DNC is a corporation and they can pick whoever they want. They don't have to choose who the voters select. Everyone should have been up in arms about that. But I feel like it was kind of just cast aside by the majority because people looked at it as though, oh, those are those crazy, Bernie people. Now we see it's happening to someone who's an independent. RFK Jr. is running as independent, not running through the Democratic Party, and they're still trying to rig things against him. Listen to this. So this is the gentleman that works with the super PAC that RFK Jr. has.
Well, the system isn't fair. It's clearly rigged, and the DNC knows that they have an incredibly weak candidate, and their only hope is to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot to prevent the American people from having a choice. Because when the American people actually look at the options of Trump, Biden, or RFK Jr., only one of them is a strong, sane candidate. And the American people are going to see that. So the DNC needs to do everything in their power to stop them. And they're prepared to break all the rules and play dirty because that's what they do.
Now, I want to chime in here for a second and say that, like I said before, RFK Jr. is not my candidate. But even though he's not my candidate, this is really messed up that they're going to these types of lengths just to make sure that things work out okay for Joe Biden. And it's really disturbing, actually. If you look at some of the polls, like you'll see in some of those key swing states that RFK Jr. is actually doing pretty well in reference to support. Now, some of the numbers have decreased over time, but still, if you look at a state like Michigan, Joe Biden is not winning that state. RFK Jr. does have, I think it's single digits in Michigan. It's gone up and gone down. It depends. But what they're trying to argue is that if RFK wasn't in this race, then Joe Biden would have more support in a state like Michigan. I actually disagree with that. I just don't think Joe Biden's going to win Michigan, period, because the largest Arab community is in Michigan, and they have a campaign called Abandon Joe Biden, right? So because of the war in Gaza. So I don't think it's just let's get him out of there so Joe Biden can win. And mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, if you think they're just going to try to do this to RFK Jr., you would be mistaken. I'm pretty sure they already have a plan mapped out to try to make things more difficult for Jill Stein and Cornel West and Claudia De La Cruz as well. So just wait for it. They're coming after him first because he's the one that has the most support as an independent / third party candidate. So they see him being a real threat to Joe Biden having a win in those swing states.
They're not here to defend themselves, so let me try to do the best I can to figure out what they're doing. First of all, they're saying you got to get all your ducks in order. That kind of makes sense. You got to get the signatures for the petitions. You got to identify folks who collected the signature, that sort of stuff. The second point they're making to the FEC is that your PAC has been colluding with RFK Jr. How do you deny that that's true?
Well, it's absolutely untrue. And the fact that the DNC, which is basically a collection of super PACs itself, would then have the temerity to accuse us of that. I mean, Biden is not personally working to get on any ballots. The Democratic Party is doing it. This is supposed to be a democracy. We're supposed to be giving people a choice. The Democratic Party doesn't want people to have a choice. Yeah. It's really as simple as that.
By the way, what we're seeing on the left side of the screen is that commercial that a lot of people saw in the Super Bowl, the Kennedy commercial, which some people in RFK Jr.'s own family suggested that he had something to do with. He denies it completely, saying it was totally done without his knowledge, that he was surprised as most people out there looking at it. You can understand why people thought there was a connection between RFK Jr. himself and that commercial. but you're willing to swear in a stack of Bibles that you never, ever, ever talked to him and he knew absolutely nothing about that commercial?
Yeah, he did not see that commercial. This was completely an initiative of AV24. And it had nothing to do with the campaign.
I have to ask, despite your denials, and maybe you're able to prove everything you say, all of this costs money to defend yourself. I'm wondering how much of what the DNC is doing is just a matter of trying to squeeze the money out of your organization by forcing you to spend money on legal bills.
And there you go. A very smart person there. That is exactly what they're trying to do. I know because they did this to Jill Stein. Now, Jill Stein is a Green Party candidate. She'll be in it till the end. The Green Party candidates are, as long as I can remember, have always been in it till the end. But this is what they try to do. They try to nickel and dime you with legal fees and with the lawsuit so that you don't have enough money to get on the ballot in those states and stay on the ballot in those states and also run campaign ads. They're basically going to try to bleed this campaign dry.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing. And they've explicitly said that that's their strategy. And you also see that Biden's denying RFK Jr. Secret Service protection even after he's had multiple people come after him. Yeah. And that is so that the campaign needs to spend money on security. I mean, this is the way the DNC and Biden play the game, and it's very dirty.
That was really unacceptable, particularly when you saw Hunter Biden going to all of his meetings at Congress and everything surrounded by Secret Service. I mean, it was really too much. Mark, let us know what happens, okay? Stay close in touch. Appreciate the information. Thank you.
So you guys see what's happening, right? They're already starting to do it. And like I said, whether you support RFK Jr. or not, that's not the issue. The issue is the DNC should not be able to do this to any candidate. And these are the same people that argue that Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. If Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy, wouldn't you argue that what the DNC is doing, pulling people off of ballots, not letting the voters actually have a real choice or their choice or make their own choice? They're trying to force the voters. They're trying to force you into picking between those two people, just Biden and Donald Trump. Wouldn't you argue that that is not a true democracy, what the DNC is doing? I certainly would. So if for all the people that are RFK supporters, you guys should try to rally around or something. I don't know what's happening over there in the camp, but you guys should try to get together and find some type of way to start a movement to push back against the DNC for doing this. This is exactly what Nico House tried to do after the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign, when he went to the Becks, who were the lawyers that represented the DNC fraud lawsuit. That's exactly what Nico was trying to do. This wasn't just about, let's just go to court and help people get their money back. It was to put pressure on the DNC. So you look back on it and you may not have been a Bernie supporter, but now you see they can do this to anyone that does not fit what they call to be the status quo. Anyone that's not their chosen candidate, and he's not their chosen candidate. Now, there are other issues coming from the campaign because you see everything's coming out of the woodworks now. This is from Mediaite. The campaign is a mess. RFK Jr. hit with staff exodus over lavish spending and amateurish leadership. Okay, and we talk about lavish spending. Just think about the lawsuits, right? Because that's something that he's going to have to deal with as well. Let me see if I can go in a little bit bigger. RFK Jr.'s campaign is in disarray amid an exodus of campaign workers who say disorganization, lavish spending, amateurish leadership, and a severe disconnect between the campaign and the candidate's values have led the long shot bid for the presidency astray. 14 members of Kennedy 24 have resigned since the start of the year, including 12 field staff and 2 main staff, according to multiple sources who spoke with Mediaite on the condition of anonymity. One source close to the campaign pinned the turmoil on 2 leaders, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, campaign manager and Kennedy's daughter-in-law, and Del Bigtree, an anti-jab activist who serves as the campaign's communications director. The source described Fox, Kennedy, and Big Tree as self-serving operatives who were making decisions based on their own personal advancement opportunities and not acting in the best interests of the candidate. Now, remember, Fox Kennedy, this is the person that actually replaced Dennis Kucinich. That's RFK Jr.'s daughter-in-law, who was also a part of the CIA. A major point of contention within the campaign has been the eye-watering payouts to campaign leadership revealed in FEC reports. Big Tree's firm, KFP Consulting, was paid $35,000 in December. It has made $90,000 off the campaign in total so far. Starlight Saint, the LLC registered to campaign COO Matthew Sanders, makes $21,000 a month. More Beautiful World, the LLC registered to campaign advisor Charles Einstein, makes $21,667 a month in October, November, and December. When the reports came out and everyone saw the obscene amount of money some people are making, while they are often paying for their own promotional materials out of pocket and can't get their gas stipend covered, many people start thinking those people are scamming and skimming to line their pockets. That came from one campaign worker. This is out of alignment with the message of the candidate. The source said lavish spending of Big Tree and others is also a point of contention among campaign workers, recalling one incident when Big Tree joined a Zoom call from a skiing resort. Dell is running around spending money lavishly, another source said. He's doing Zoom calls from the slopes with champagne while many people are volunteers and not getting paid. So this is what happens when you don't run a grassroots campaign, right? So I like this type of campaign, I never participated with, right? But like Bernie, for example, had a grassroots campaign. So those kind of campaigns, when you're on the ground and you're knocking on doors, yes, there are a lot of volunteers. Most of the people on the ground are not being paid, right? That's how it is. But the reality is you don't have those types of funds to pay people with for the campaign in the first place as a grassroots campaign. But I think what could have happened here, the super PAC, and I think in the beginning, RFK Jr. was raising a lot of money. When I looked at the FEC filing, he had the most between himself, Marianne Williamson, and Cornel West. He had raised the most money at that point in time when I looked at it. But I think that, again, there was a difference from when you were running as a Democrat and you're running as an independent. When you run as an independent, it's a lot harder, right? And I promote independent runs and third party runs. But the reality is you do have to raise more money when you run third party or independent. Like there's a lot more that you have to pay for that isn't just going to come to you because you're not running through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. So it is going to be expensive, and you do have to raise a lot of money. And I think what could have happened is I think that now RFK Jr.'s campaign is starting to see some of the hurdles that you have to deal with running an independent campaign versus when he was running in the Democratic Party. A lot of those hurdles are financial. It goes on to say here, Fox Kennedy, meanwhile, hired her nanny, Bridget Rasmussen, a chef of staff, which was seen internally as a sign of incompetence for the director of a presidential campaign. A second campaign worker also griped about the hiring of Fox Kennedy's nanny as the campaign's chief of staff. Although Bridget is a nice woman, she has no idea how to operate in her role and is inexperienced. This is merely one red flag that indicates incompetence. The campaign is not run like a business, one source said. There is no professional environment. It feels like a spring break party cruise. Well, let me tell you, I've been on some spring break party cruise, okay? I've been on some of those spring break party cruise. Dell has heard on multiple occasions saying, "We are like rock stars, and this is like being on tour with a rock band." Fox Kennedy responded to the story in a statement. With over 100 staff members and tens of thousands of volunteers nationwide, Team Kennedy has great folks come and go depending on the needs of each phase of the campaign. As the most successful independent campaign of the last 3 decades, we wish them nothing but the best. NBC's latest poll has RFK at 35%, with 9 months still ahead, and we are laser focused on delivering a historic victory for our country this November. So you guys see this? So the latest NBC poll has RFK Jr. at 34%. That's why the DNC is trying to get him off the ballots. That is why. And I just want to add this piece right here. We already talked about the Dennis Kucinich part. I'm going to get down here to this part here. Mediaite reported in October that Kennedy planned on leaving the Democratic race to run as an independent. He now faces an uphill climb to achieve ballot access in all 50 states as a candidate without the backing of an established political party. The campaign is a mess because upper management consists of people who are serving their own needs rather than the candidates. One source close to the campaign lamented. There is no one with any political experience, and it shows. So, yeah. They're having some hurdles there with that campaign. And notice how you're hearing these things now that he's running as an independent, and you didn't hear about these complaints when he was running through the Democratic Party. So again, there are a lot of resources that you just don't have when you run third party or independent. It's just the reality of the situation. Let's go to some of the comments here. Mastermind says lazy nostalgia. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. I spoke with a labor lawyer who worked for big corporations many years ago. He said 100% of the time when a shop goes union, it's due to piss poor management. The pro management class sucks nowadays. Interesting. Thank you, Crazy Puppet. RFK Jr. reminds me of a burnout backstabbing. Interesting. Thank you, New York. He wasn't talking about the Kennedys as an outsider. He is a Kennedy and shouldn't apologize for shh. I don't understand why he apologized. That's why I said I don't understand. Why are you apologizing? Thank you for the super chat, Tony. Listening along to you, Sabrina, versus Diamond and Silk night and day. That's interesting. Thank you for the super chat, Crazy Puppet. I thought it was an oxymoron to use Kennedy for campaign. I thought we were against monarchy. Interesting, Crazy Puppet. Interesting. Thank you, New York Varsity. Tell you what, if he flips on Israel, he would lose money but win the election. Worrying about campaign money will be his downfall. Thank you, Vegan. Hi, Sabby. I thought RFK Jr.'s ad during the Super Bowl was very clever, and I was very impressed, even though he turns me off voting for him. Thank you for that, Vegan. Big T says, hey, Sabby, did you see Bad Faith interview with Dean Phillips? Will you be covering? Oh, I saw that interview. I saw that interview. I'm probably going to cover that on Sunday because I have tomorrow. I gotta cover the Fannie Willis stuff tomorrow, but I'll probably cover that on Sunday. I definitely saw. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. D's will lose regardless if RFK Jr. or other non-Democrat or Republican. Right. I know, but I guess they're trying to. They're ridiculous. Thank you, Philip. I'm a libertarian in New York. Cuomo killed ballot access for the Libertarian Party in New York and Green Party by raising the vote threshold for minor parties. Plus, GOP worked with the Dems. Yes, Larry Sharp explained that to me when he came on my show before. And that's why people like Jill Stein will have to run as an independent in New York. And thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Democrats want to control as much as they figure they can. Well said. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Regarding your interview with y'all saying Amazon is the only game in town, this is how you combat it. Charter a state public bank to create jobs in infrastructure. Then do a government jobs guarantee in infrastructure and not just transportation, like rail, roads, bridges, tunnels, or ports, but also in broadband with universal access plus power. UBI for others, use that to tide you over until you get your worker co-ops going. Well said. That's a good point there, Roger. And thank you for this tip as well. That will allow you to wean yourself off of Amazon, Walmart, Target, and weapons manufacturers fix that is in every rural community. This is like an abusive spouse that knocked out their wife or husband, kidnapped them to a deserted island where when they wake up, they can't escape. Regarding RFK, this is why we should run CBIs to abolish all parties to dismantle their strength. Hey, I'm all for that. I'm all for that, kids. Okay. We're getting into this next story here. We have a bombshell. Just when you thought you would not hear any more about Russiagate, dun, dun, dun. It appears that Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger have dropped a bombshell in reference to Russiagate. This is new information and how Barack Obama may have also been involved along with the CIA. It appears, surprise, surprise, we have been lied to again. Let's get into this. I have a couple of clips to show as well. Michael Schellenberger said the CIA had foreign allies spy on Trump team, triggering Russia collusion hoax, sources say. The U.S. intelligence community targeted 26 Trump advisors for foreign spy agencies to reverse target and bump. And we'll get into a little bit of what Michael says here, right here. Until now, the official story has been that the FBI's investigation began after Australian intelligence officials told U.S. officials that a Trump aide had boasted to an Australian diplomat that Russia had damning material about Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. So, everybody remember that? We all remember that. That's what we were told. In truth, the U.S. intelligence community asked the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance to surveillance Trump's associates and share the intelligence they acquired with U.S. agencies. Now, this is coming from sources close to the House of Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence investigation. The Five Eyed Nations are the U.S., UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. After Public and Racket had been told that President Barack Obama's CIA Director John Brennan had identified 26 Trump associates for the Five Eyes to target, a source confirmed that the intelligence community had identified them as people to bump or make contact with or manipulate. They were targets of our own IC and law enforcement, targets for collection and misinformation. Unknown details about the FBI's investigation of the Trump campaign and raw intelligence related to the IC surveillance of the Trump campaign are in a 10-inch binder that Trump ordered to be declassified at the very end of his term. So all of this rests on that 10-inch binder, which is somewhere, probably at Mar-a-Lago. I'm pretty sure they're going to be searching for that. If the top secret documents exist proving these charges, they are potentially proof that multiple U.S. intelligence officials broke laws against spying and election interference. Let's get into the discussion. Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger were both on Fox News. They spoke to Jesse Waters. Now, for people come at me and say, oh, why weren't they on CNN? Why weren't they on MSNBC? I don't think MSNBC or CNN is going to invite them on for this discussion. No. Remember, those networks, they lean towards the Democratic Party. So obviously, they're not going to bring them on to talk about corrupt things that the Democratic Party has done. Just like Fox News wouldn't bring them on to talk about this if it was in reference to the Republican Party. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
In the 1950s, President Dwight Eisenhower announced that he was naming the first civilian director in the history of the CIA. His name was Allen Dulles, and Dulles had one order: eliminate communism. But under Dulles, the CIA morphed into Washington's most powerful agency built up by a league of ruthless assassins operating under the orders to protect capitalism from the Soviet menace. Dulles became power hungry. Just months into his term, Dulles green-lighted Operation PB Success, a coup to take out Guatemala's democratically elected leader, Jacobo Arbenz, and replace him with a military dictator. Why? To serve as a vanguard for corporate interests. You see, they needed to protect the profits of the United Fruit Company. They were under threat of having their land confiscated under the Arbenz administration. And the CIA has never shied away from government overthrow, from Iran to the Congo to South Vietnam. The CIA has never changed until recently, when they began interfering in American elections. And when it happened, it was called a conspiracy theory.
The biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
There's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is. It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I say something? You know, this is 60 Minutes, and we can't put on things we can't verify.
You won't put it on because it's bad for Biden.
We can't put on things we...
Is Leslie Stahl going to come back and apologize for what she said in this interview? You don't even have to like Donald Trump. And honestly, let's look at this from a nonpartisan lens, because you don't have to like Donald Trump. What we're trying to focus on here is, what does the law say? And in reference to what happened here, was that correct? Was that the right thing to do? Obviously, no, this was not the right thing to do. Obviously, this is really messed up. This is really messed up. So don't look at this through a partisan lens. To that point, I feel that Leslie Stahl should have to come back and issue a retractment for this interview. And I'd say the same thing if it was Joe Biden sitting in that seat. We have to look at this from a different lens.
We can't verify.
Leslie, they spied on my campaign.
Well, we can't verify
It's been totally
that.
verified.
No.
It's been, just go down and get the papers. They spied on my campaign. They got caught.
Barack Obama said everything was done by the book.
I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
Now,
is Obama going to come back and retract that statement?
Obama isn't the first politician to lie and won't be the last. Last night, we brought you a bombshell report from journalists Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi that allege Obama's CIA not only was involved in the Russia hoax, they started it.
The story, as you mentioned, was that, we were just informed by foreign intelligence about this. Our sources tell us a very different story, which is that this was initiated by the U.S. government. It came from within the U.S. government's intelligence community, including the CIA.
According to this report, Obama's CIA director, John Brennan, asked our English-speaking allies to target the Trump campaign.
So in other words, they started it. It came from inside the house, not outside the house. And all of them lied. Obama, Hillary, Leslie Stahl lied over and over and over again. None of them are held accountable for these lies.
Handing these foreign intelligence agencies a target list of 26 Trump associates. These 26 Trump associates were to be bumped, meaning they would be approached by assets, bumped into, and these interactions and relationships would be reported to the FBI as suspicious. These were people the CIA considered easy marks, like George Papadopoulos, 20-year-old. Foreign spies didn't discover evidence of Trump-Russia collusion and turn it over to the feds. Foreign spies were assigned by Obama's CIA to create a false impression of collusion, to trigger an FBI counterintelligence investigation.
So let's think about this for a second, guys. Like, I've heard some scandals throughout my lifetime, government scandals, but this is crazy. Like, Barack Obama assigned foreign intel to target Trump's campaign. Whether you like Trump or not. Yo, this is wild. This is wild. And look at what just happened. So we covered the story about RFK Jr., the DNC coming after him, right? Who's to say they wouldn't do something like that to him or Jill or Cornell or Claudia or anybody else that they did not pick? Anyone else they didn't handpick. This is why it's problematic. So if you're one of those people where you're like, I can't stand Trump, so we don't need to defend what happened here. No, this is not about that. Forget the Trump of the Trump. Forget that it's Donald Trump and just focus on what was done, because they could do that to anyone. Anyone.
Obama's CIA worked with Hillary's foreign agents in London to hatch the hoax, which led to the FBI investigation, the illegal wiretapping, the Mike Flynn sting, and then when Trump caught wind of it, the Comey firing. And then Comey leaks the memos which triggered the Mueller investigation. Now, the Mueller investigation was designed to cover up for Obama and Hillary and tee up impeachment. It failed on impeachment, but the cover-up worked. Until now. New reporting by Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger revealed that House investigators had discovered the root causes, but their investigation and all of their documents were confined to secure rooms in Langley. And when Trump was leaving office in those hectic final days, he attempted to declassify this material, which started a battle between former CIA Director Gina Haspel, the Department of Justice, and the National Archives. The report says someone may have taken this binder of material exposing the entire intelligence community out of Langley. And it may have been what the FBI was looking for when they raided Mar-a-Lago.
So this explains a lot, doesn't it? Doesn't this explain a lot? Remember those classified, those documents that Trump had at Mar-a-Lago? Remember when the FBI showed up and they raided Mar-a-Lago? What it appears, obviously, they did not find that binder. So that binder is somewhere. I don't know if it's still at Mar-a-Lago, but it's somewhere out there and somebody knows where it is.
Others say that's not true, but the point remains that the Obama-Biden White House, their CIA and FBI director, launched an illegal preemptive war against democracy, got caught, and have been covering it up for 8 years. Schellenberger and Taibbi also say redacted FOIA documents suggest that Biden has been conspiring against Donald Trump with the intelligence community to prosecute the former president in federal court, which would be an impeachable offense. Matt Taibbi is the Racket News editor-in-chief and Griftopia author. So this is great reporting. It's hard to verify because, you know, we were told that this special counsel, Durham, was going to get to the bottom of it. Are you saying he missed this?
Mm-hmm. We were told that the scope of the Durham investigation was limited to a few areas and that he wasn't looking at this particular direction.
Oh, pause there, ladies and gentlemen. So even that Durham report, that long Durham report, what was over like 300 pages? Even that long ass report was only limited to certain areas. And why was he limited to only certain areas? Why not give him access to all? And remember, guys, I don't know if everyone remember Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, they were part of the Twitter files. So they testified before Congress. So they know how to do their research.
The information that we have, the investigation that was conducted by the House Permanent Select Committee on Investigations of Intelligence, what they found was a broad political espionage campaign, and there were two main conclusions that are at the center of our reports. One is that at least 26 Trump aides and associates were improperly and without predication placed under surveillance in the election year of 2016. And the other one is that these same folks cooked the intelligence for the January 6, 2017 intelligence community assessment, saying that Russia conducted an influence campaign to help Donald Trump. It's a WMD style story. They suppressed dissenting opinions and created a false narrative.
So there's a lot of debate over this binder. Is there a binder? What's in the binder? Is it redacted? Who has it? Where is it? Is that why they conducted the raid? What's going on with these materials?
Well, it's a difficult story because we heard multiple versions of what the binder is, how many binders there are. We heard there are as many as 3. But we do know a couple of concrete things. We know that only a share of the HIPSI investigation ever got out. Of course, people are aware of the Nunes memo, which led to the investigation of uses of FISA. We know that there was a report done into the origins of that intelligence community assessment, which supposedly never left a vault on the grounds of Langley. That's like a 17 to 20 page report that was confirmed by multiple sources. Apart from that, we were told there are numerous other investigative materials that may or may not be these binders that stories are referring to. But we know that there's a lot of stuff that didn't get out, that there were thousands of hours of investigation and their conclusions have not yet been declassified. Mm-hmm.
Well, this would just be another reason why they want to do everything they can to prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House, because he'll blow the lid off of that. He tried to, wasn't able to at the very end, but caught him most of the time. I am interested in your reporting.
Want to just say something here. Basically, Donald Trump is like, have you guys ever had a friend that has no filter? Everybody has like that one friend, or I think everyone does. Everyone's had like that one friend that has no filter and they just say whatever comes to their mind and they don't think, oh, this might offend people, or, oh, maybe this is not the right time and place to say this. This is the sort of thing that I'm going to say, right? Or you may actually, sometimes grandparents are like that because, my grandmother told me like as she got older, she cared less about what people thought. So she would just say whatever was on her mind, right? So the thing with Trump as a politician is that Trump said the quiet part out loud. So some of the things that Donald Trump said, it's not like you didn't have Democrat politicians who thought some of those same things, not everything, but thought some of those same things, or other Republican politicians who also felt that same way. The difference was they didn't say it out loud. Donald Trump said these things out loud. And so it almost feels like, and not just because of what happened on January 6th, it almost feels like they want to punish Donald Trump for basically just blowing the lid on so many things, for saying things out loud that are like, no, you're not really supposed to say that. Some of the comments that he made too about other countries, I did not agree with those comments. At the same time, I'm pretty sure he wasn't the only one who had made those kind of comments. They just made those comments behind closed doors. He made these comments in public. So I think that was part of the problem. And they're like, no, we cannot have this guy in. He's telling too much shit. He's talking too much. We got to get this guy out of here. But this is very telling because Obama was the one who was very confident in Hillary Clinton as a candidate. Remember this? Hillary, it's your turn next. I'm passing the mantle to you. I'm passing it on. If Obama was that confident in Hillary Clinton as a candidate and her campaign for president, why would they feel the need to even do this? Why would they feel the need to even try to target and spy on Donald Trump's campaign and his staff? If they knew, you know why? Because I think deep down, Barack Obama knew that she wasn't a strong candidate. I think deep down, he knew that a lot of people that were in like the Rust Belt in particular, a lot of people working class, like in those towns that used to be mill towns, or some of them were the old factory towns. He knew that a lot of those people probably would vote for Donald Trump, even though some of them had voted for him. And how did he know that? Because he didn't fulfill the promises that he made to those communities when he campaigned in those towns. And then 2, you have to think about the jobs that were removed from those towns as well under his administration and under Bill Clinton's administration. So what this tells you is that all along, Barack Obama knew that Hillary was not a strong candidate.
that there is, I guess, heavily redacted FOIA documents that suggest that Joe Biden has been collaborating with the intelligence community to prosecute these federal cases against Donald Trump. And we'll see how that shakes out. Matt, great reporting to you and Schellenberger. I suggest everybody go to your website, your Substack, and read it for yourself. Thanks again.
You're really going to have to put bubble wrap around Matt Taibbi now. And then I want to take you back to this conversation that Obama had about Russiagate. I don't want you to forget about this because, see, I always like to go back and see what was said. Now, this was 7 years ago. Barack Obama responds about Russian cyber attacks. So listen to this, guys. Listen to this, knowing what you know now.
There's another issue going forward. Is it necessary for the security of the United States that Russia pay some price for doing this? If, as you said, they did it.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it. And there is among the big powers, there has been a traditional understanding of that everybody's trying to gather intelligence on everybody else. It's no secret that Russian intelligence officers or Chinese or, for that matter, Israeli or British or other intelligence agencies, that their job is to get insight into the workings of other countries that they're not reading in the newspapers every day.
And at the same time, just think about this. Remember the date. This was 7 years ago. And at the same time, he and the CIA under his administration, they were trying to gather intelligence on Donald Trump as he was having this interview. This is wild.
There's a difference between that and the kind of malicious cyber attacks that steal trade secrets or engage in industrial espionage, something that we've seen the Chinese do. And there's a difference between that and activating intelligence in a way that's designed to influence elections. So we have been working hard to make sure that what we do is proportional, that what we do is meaningful.
You guys see this? So in a way, he's not even, look, eye contact, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at the body language. He's looking down at the floor when he's having this conversation with the interviewer. You guys notice this? He's looking down when he's making these statements. So in a way, it's like when he's saying we try to do everything that we could to make sure, yeah, now you know what else they tried to do. Like it wasn't even just, like in a way, he was kind of giving himself away, maybe in a subtle way. But just look at this.
One of the things that we're going to have to do over the next decade is to ultimately arrive at some rules of what is a new game. And that is the way in which traditional propaganda and traditional covert influence efforts are being turbocharged by the internet. And
here it is, guys. Here it is. What did I tell you guys? All this was connected. Obama making these statements, and he's made these statements before recently as well, making these statements like we got to be careful about what's on the internet. The Democratic Party being the ones to push Twitter executives to censor certain information on Twitter and also Facebook. This was all connected. All of it. Russiagate, the censorship. And what they do is they refer to it as, oh, we got to make sure that there's no misinformation that is out there. But a lot of times what they refer to as misinformation is actually the correct information. They just don't want you to know it. They don't want you to know what they're doing.
By the cyber world. And so the whole issue of cybersecurity and how we play defense, how we think about offense, and how we avoid an escalation of a major cyber war.
One of the ways that they prevent the defense, how they do defense and offense, was the censorship. That was one of the ways to do both.
Or a cyber arms race is something that some of our smartest folks in government and in the private sector are spending a lot of time thinking about, because there is an asymmetry here. We are more digitalized. Our economy is more advanced. It's much wealthier. And it means that we have certain vulnerabilities that some of our adversaries don't have. This is actually a good example of where, in addition to whatever actions that we take bilaterally against Russia, we've got to spend some time working at an international level to start instituting some norms, the same way we did with things like nuclear weapons, because ultimately we can have a situation where everybody's worse off. That's what we did with China when we were seeing repeated hacking, primarily for industrial espionage purposes, commercial purposes. They were stealing, technology and ideas. And I had a very blunt conversation with President Xi saying, if you don't stop it, here's what we are going to do. But what we also did was we mobilized the G20 and the G7 and the United Nations to start adopting basic rules saying this is not something you do.
Pause for a second. I want to check something with you guys. First of all, it's one thing to steal technology. Some would argue that China is more advanced in reference to technology than we are in certain ways. But how do you steal ideas? Because my dad always said to me, an idea is just an idea unless you don't have a plan or strategy. So if someone tells you they have an idea, but they don't actually do anything with it, they don't come up with any type of strategy, and someone else says, you know what, I'm going to take that idea and I'm going to do something with it. How do you sit?
And that can make a difference over time.
If whatever response you take is not completed by January 20th, do you have any reason to have confidence that President Trump will continue it?
My view is that this is not a partisan issue. And part of what we should be doing is to try to take it out of election season and move it into governing season. The irony of all this, of course, is that for most of my presidency, there's been a pretty sizable wing of the Republican Party that has consistently criticized me for not being tough enough on Russia. Some of those folks during the campaign endorsed Donald Trump, despite the fact that a central tenet of his foreign policy was we shouldn't be so tough on Russia.
Well, is that why you initiated Russiagate? Because people said you weren't tough enough on Russia? Oh, boy.
And that kind of inconsistency, I think, makes it appear, at least, that their particular position on Russia on any given day depends on what's politically expedient. There was a poll that came out a couple of days ago that said that 37% of Republicans have a favorable view of Vladimir Putin. Now think about that. Over a third of Republican voters think Putin's a good guy. This is somebody, the former head of the KGB, who is responsible for crushing democracy in Russia, muzzling the press, throwing political dissidents in jail, countering American efforts to expand freedom at every turn, is currently making decisions that's leading to a slaughter in Syria.
Wasn't the U.S. some of those things that he said that Vladimir Putin was doing also applies to the United States government? That's the problem. That's the problem. Like, how can you talk about that? And you guys, in reference to throwing political people into jail, what about Julian Assange? So who are you talking about? It's just one of those things. It's like some of these things that they're accusing Russia of. We did some of these things. We really did some of these things. So this was very telling. I'm going to let him finish here. Then we'll go on.
And a big chunk of the Republican Party, which prided itself during the Reagan era and for decades that followed as being the bulwark against Russian influence, now suddenly is embracing him. And my point here is that it's very important that we do not let the inter-family argument between Americans, the domestic political differences between Democrats and Republicans, obscure the need for us to stand together, figure out what it is that the Russians are interested in doing in terms of influencing our democratic process.
You hear this? Okay, here comes the election stuff, influencing our democratic process. Here comes Russiagate.
And inoculating ourselves from it. And that requires us having a clear-eyed view about it. It requires us not to relitigate the election. It requires us not to point fingers. It requires us just to say, here's what happened. Let's be honest about it. And let's not use it as a political football, but let's figure out how we prevent this from happening in the future. Because
let that sit there. How to prevent it from happening in the future. So notice most of that interview, he's looking down when he's talking to this guy. Notice that, very telling, right? What was also interesting is that he said 37% of Republicans were favorable of Vladimir Putin. The way he said it was like 50%. He was talking about this as though, oh my God, you would have thought it was higher than that. What I would have been more concerned with at that particular time, towards the end of his presidency, is the fact that you had even more, a higher percentage that was favorable of you, Barack Obama. And you had a higher percentage of African Americans that were favorable of you, considering that Black wealth tanked under your presidency because of your economic policies. You are the one we should have been concerned about, not someone who doesn't run this country. You know, like you would, Putin all the way over there, You were right here. So even to this day, it's still concerning to me when I see these polls of Obama's favorability. It's still shocking to me because I'm just like, and particularly under the African American community, I'm like, how can you think about the things that Obama did that actually hurt the Black community economically in your face? Hopefully, I have to double check, but hopefully Matt might be here tomorrow and we can go into more detail about that. But that is very damning, you guys. They started it. Why? If you felt like Hillary Clinton, I'm with her, if you felt like she was such a strong candidate, why would you even need to do that? And this is what pisses me off about the Democratic Party. This is why I left the Democratic Party. This is why I'm a registered independent. Because you guys can't let things play out. You can't let the American people decide what we think is best for us. You guys always got to cheat. You always have to go in behind the scenes and let me make sure something works out because let's help this candidate. You don't let the American people have a voice, but you're the ones that are arguing about us not having or losing our democracy. How do we have a real democracy when you're making decisions behind the scenes? Let's go to some of the comments here. If you have not had a chance to do so, smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. If you are new, don't forget to sub and share. And we'll go to the comments here. It's wild. It's just wild to me. Like, just let people make a choice for ourselves. Joe says, remember, CIA doesn't get in trouble for lying. Sean, of course they will do the same thing to an independent. Thank you, Sparky. Garland Nixon reported the CIA/Five Eyes spying on Trump 6 or 7 years ago. The legacy media is just now getting to it. Interesting, Sparky. And thank you for this as well. Now that I think about it, I think it may have been 8 years ago Garland Nixon reported on it. Well, I might have to bring Garland Nixon back on too as well. Philosophical says they spied on Bernie's wife too, and I'm sure it was all related. Thank you for this, Sparky. The Duran and Lee Stranahan reported on it back then too. I'll have to look into that. Thank you. DC says Hillary had more visible public support than Biden, but both have less visible public support than Trump or Sanders. It shows how fake our elections are. Thank you for this, Sparky. It wasn't a secret. The mainstream media just didn't want to pick up on it at that time. Interesting. And thank you, Janice. Obama and Clinton knew that she wasn't strong and her ties to Russia could be used against her. She sold rights to uranium after Clinton Foundation bribed by a Russian energy company. Pure projection. Thank you for that. And I'll take the comment on Rockfin. Eric. I never know where to put this new mic because I'm always just like, it's shorter than my other one. So I'm just like, just moving back and forth. The other one was like this tall and I can only lean this way. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. The parties lose power with each state they don't have access to, taking all their strength. Yes, Cuomo did do that. Reason, because the Working Families Party dared endorse Cynthia Nixon. So after he beat her in the Democratic primary, Cuomo said, I'll fix them. That's when he raised the threshold. Also, funny how Waters can now acknowledge the CIA did that when it was against a system of government he disagreed with. Good point. Thank you for the tip, DC. The point of Russiagate was to cover up the political assassination of Seth Rich. Hashtag justice for Seth. Thank you for that. And thank you for this tip, Roger. Well then, Sabby, maybe Obama should not have interfered in the Dem primary and let them hash it out themselves. All those people who voted Bernie in 2016 went and either voted for the couch or Trump. Obama said it doesn't involve pointing fingers at each other. You mean like calling black people like Uhuru and TD Hip Hop and others Putin puppet Russian agents? That's a good point. Very good points. And now we are moving on to another point. Joe Biden has been struggling with African-American voters, even though African-Americans supported him heavily in 2020. He has actually lost support from African-Americans since he actually took office. It has continued to decrease over time. A lot of that has to do with economic decisions that have been made by Joe Biden. You see a trend here? Economic decisions that actually are hurting the Black community and not helping the Black community. And for the people who like to tout this line, because I saw this on social media, they're trying to get like other Black people to say, let me show you all the things Joe Biden actually did do to help the Black community. And they all keep saying the unemployment rate between Black people under Joe Biden was significantly low, but they also leave out the fact that Joe Biden removed people from unemployment. So they leave that out. You know, that's important. You know, if you kick off thousands of people unemployment, I'm doing a little bit of math here. The unemployment rate is going to decrease. So they leave that out. So they're pulling out all the stops. I've seen them on TikTok. Some of these people are paid. Well, he has even gone as far to have dinner with a Black family. We got so much to say about this. I don't know what kind of pandering this is, but this is next level pandering. He said it's great to spend time with Christian and Carter and discuss their involvement in their community and schools. So here we go.
Well, I mean, you got chicken fingers, you got the whole deal. I want the root of making sure I had the hamburger. So tell me about you guys. What you doing these days?
Why don't you share about your passion of sports?
So first of all, let's go back here. And what's the first thing? So first of all, for those who don't live in the South, I believe this is the Cookout. So in the Carolinas, there's a fast food chain called the Cookout, and they sell cookout food, burgers, fries, chicken tenders, that kind of stuff. It's okay. I mean, you can make the food better yourself at home. I'm just keeping it real. So they're at the Cookout. That's where they decided to get the food from. Now, two problems. First problem, you're the president of the United States. You come to eat and break bread with these kids, and you guys got fast food. Why didn't you give them something healthy? Stop trying to give my people high blood pressure, things like that. But president of the United States, and this is what you sit down and eat with them? Chicken fingers, burgers, and fries? No, if you're the president and you're coming to eat with listen, this is what you're going to do. We're going to have a steak or a salmon, something better, maybe a little baked potato or sweet potato, whichever kind of potato you want on the side, broccoli, asparagus, vegetables, an actual meal, a home cooked meal. That's what we're going to have. If you're the president and you're coming to their house and you guys are going to go get food, no, you're going to get some real food. You're going to get real food. How is this any different from when the basketball team went to go visit Trump when he was in the White House and he gave them hamburgers? How is this any different? And the Cookout. So while they sit down and talk about what they're doing in school, what they should be talking about is the fact that even the Cookout, which is a fast food chain, the prices have significantly increased. And it's not worth the increase. They should be talking about that. How about these damn prices, Joe? You see how expensive this food here is at the Cookout? It didn't used to be that way, Joe. When you gonna get these prices to come down? That's what he should be talking about. Then he got chicken. Hold on.
Well, I mean, you got chicken fingers, you got the whole deal. I want the root of making sure I had the hamburger. So tell me about you guys. What you
Let me take the black folks to get some chicken. It had to be fried chicken. It couldn't be salmon. It couldn't be, I don't know. Give me something else. What if you're vegetarian? It couldn't have been like a portobello mushroom, no tofu, nothing. It had to be fried chicken, damn it. I saw this and I literally cringed.
doing these days?
Why don't you share about your passion of sports?
I'm playing AAU basketball right now.
Are you really? Are you guard?
Yes, sir.
Now, what grade are you in?
7th grade.
7th grade.
Right now, I'm just doing basketball, playing guard on the JV team for my school.
How about in school? How y'all doing in school? What you tell the president about the school?
Favorite thing about it is the business academy I'm in. We get to travel, so we've been to NC State, Wake Tech, and
You're kidding me.
we went to this small dry cleaning business.
Look at the look on Joe's face. He's like, this young black man is in a business academy? You're kidding me. I didn't want my kids to go to a racial jungle. What has happened?
We get to travel, so we've been to NC State, Wake Tech, and
You're kidding me.
we went to this small dry cleaning business. And it's cool. It's a great experience.
I'm impressed. Is that a new program at the school?
Yes, sir, it is. It just started just a couple of years ago.
Then they got to show them opening the ketchup packets. He's calling them sir. It just, oh Lord.
You know how much this guy loves you. You just feel it, can't you?
Yes, sir.
Your dad jumped in front of a bull for you. By the way, we dads are hard to raise. Once you're a teenager, we're hard to raise. So you gotta be patient with us, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
A little patient.
I don't know who thought this was a good idea. And this is on the website. It says watch now at Joe Link. So what kind of pandering is this? Vote for me, Black people. Look at me sitting at the table eating fried chicken fingers and fries with this Black family in their home. I went into their home and sat down. It's pandering. What is this? How about y'all talk about some real issues? Talk about how high those prices are. Talk about the inflation. Talk about how the corporations are continue to increase these prices at the grocery store. And then all the food to give somebody. It had to be chicken. That really bugged me. It made me feel some kind of way. It really made me feel some kind of way. And it apparently made this gentleman also feel some kind of way. This voter here, he's also talking. I'm sorry, you guys got to see Jesse Waters multiple times tonight. This voter here said that he is not feeling Biden. He will be ditching Biden. And he wasn't feeling the fried chicken either. Let's get into it.
Will the chicken summit be effective?
No, because let me tell you something, Jesse. He forgot to bring watermelon and grape drink. Now, if he had brought watermelon and grape drink, that would have completed the trifecta. But he felt like we only like chicken and we need these things in conjunction with each other. And I'm just sad that he decided.
So let me show you guys, for those of you who are not familiar with the cookout. So at the cookout, you have the option to just walk up. You can walk up to the window. It's kind of weird. Like they have drive-through, they have this where you can just walk up to the window and order the food. And I wanted you to see this because for people saying, how do you know he got the food? I want you to see he got the food. He was the one to pick the food.
Watermelon and grape drink. Now, if he had brought watermelon and grape drink, that would have completed the trifecta. But he felt like we only like chicken and we need these things in conjunction with each other. And I'm just sad that he decided to carry it a little farther and say, let me get a hamburger so I can let you know I'm different than you. I don't know if you heard that part. He decided to have a hamburger. He didn't want none of that Negro food.
He did not want.
No, we didn't. That was the other thing. Like, you guys get the chicken. Okay, Black folks eat the chicken. I'm going to eat the hamburger.
Want the chicken, that's for sure. We always send Johnny out. I'm sure you've seen all the shows. You never miss an episode of Primetime. When I used to go out in the street during the Obama years, I had such a hard time finding a Black American who didn't like Obama. Obama could do anything, and they loved him. Johnny goes out now. We have a hard time finding Black Americans who like Biden. Is that going to translate into anything?
I think it really is. Let me tell you something. Not only do I watch you every night, but my mom watches. She watches, and she says she hate watches you. She watches you, but you make points, but she said you're crazy.
So
and
is
I
my
believe
mom.
that's what's happening. A lot of
both of our moms hate watch me.
Well, I know. So I think what's happening is really a movement is coming about. I've been on the whole, hey, as Black people, we should hold our vote for who is actually for us for a long time. And I got called all kinds of words that I won't say on your family-friendly program. But I really do think a solid movement is going here. I live in Atlanta, and I've heard from a lot of people who called into my radio program about how they really are changing. So there's a real momentum. It's more than just words. This is really happening.
So should we put how much stock in 50, Snoop, Killer Mike, guys like that?
You don't put any much stock in them, but I'll tell you what you should put stock in. Most Black men, as Killer Mike said, they have fears, but he didn't tell you what the exact fear was. The fear is in the Black community that Black men don't want to upset Black women. If you remember in the last election cycle, Black men were coming out. Seriously, they were coming out voting and saying they were going to vote for Trump. And then there were articles upon articles in major magazines, Huff Post, talking about how Black men have let the Black community down. So they were afraid of having that put on them. So now I think many of them, because Black women are starting to say, hey, I'm looking elsewhere, they're feeling more emboldened to say, we're really going to go and cast that ballot for some.
Black women or their wives? Because, or their wives. Is it the wives that are saying that? The wives that are saying this is what's going to happen in this house? Because I think it's different if it's just, you're just talking about Black women that they're not in a relationship with, and you're talking about Black women like, this is my wife, and my wife said this. You know that saying, happy wife, happy life, like that kind of thing. Like, my wife runs this house, that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm curious about. Is it the wives, or is it just, black women that they work with or they're friends with? I would assume it's the wife.
Going to vote for Trump, and then there were articles upon articles in major magazines, at Huff Post, talking about how black men have let the black community down. So they were afraid of having that put on them. So now I think many of them, because black women are starting to say, hey, I'm looking elsewhere, they're feeling more emboldened to say, we're really going to go and cast that ballot for someone other than a Democrat.
All right, we have so much in common. I don't want to upset black women either. Think it's smart advice.
Yeah, because I gave the side eye. I gave the side eye. Bryce says it has nothing to do with black women. No. Thank you, Bryce. That's why I was like, wait, what? Oh, no.
Hey, I got to go in the house when this is over. Hey, I know who I don't want to upset.
Be on your best behavior. Tommy, thank you so much. Say hi to
Okay, so that's an interesting perspective there. Now, I want to show you this as well. Here's another segment. This is from News Nation. Biden still losing support among black voters. And this is why I say that stupid ad that he had with him eating, like, oh, let's sit down and eat with this family. Like, why would you even have that be a part of your campaign? That doesn't show you getting any damn thing done.
And President Biden is in South Carolina this weekend for a series of fundraisers in the state that propelled him to the Democratic nomination. And of course, then the presidency 4 years ago. After struggling to make headway in the first 3 primaries in 2020, Biden rode the endorsement of Representative Jim Clyburn to a victory in South Carolina and then in 11 of 13 primaries on Super Tuesday. But now Biden appears to be losing popularity, especially among black voters, putting his re-election chances at risk. Let's bring in Brooke Schaefer, who's in Columbia, South Carolina, with more on that. Hey, Brooke.
Hey there, Hannah. Good morning. President Biden's favorability amongst voters overall is down. But like you said this morning, some Democrats are concerned about a key demographic here. Black voters' feelings towards President Biden are wavering, and that could spell trouble for him come November. Looking back at some of the numbers in 2020, Democrats won the black vote by incredible margins with about 92% of the vote. But some latest numbers from YouGov that are out just this week show a 20% drop in that support.
I just want to pause here so you guys can see this. Candidates share the black vote. In 2020, Joe Biden got 92%. And you'll have to remember, guys, Obama actually received higher than that. I believe it was 98% in 2008. And I think in 2012, that dropped down to like 94, 93%. I forget. But I do know he was higher than 92%. Now in 2024, it's 72%. And I would actually argue, I think it's lower, a little bit lower than that 72, right? And Donald Trump had 8% of the black vote in 2020 and 13% of black support in 2024. So what you're seeing is some of the support that left Joe Biden for 2024 has moved over towards Donald Trump.
Some black voters here in South Carolina told me that they don't like their options. They are disappointed with President Biden and are even considering not voting at all come November.
And Biden just want to cause more bills for everybody, and you got a lot of homeless people out here. I think the black community is everybody community.
I did vote for Biden last election, and if he is running again, I don't think that would be a selection I would make. I don't want to say regret it. That's a strong word. I want to say I regret it. I just wish it was another choice.
See, you notice what those two guys said there? The first guy said Biden just wants to, increase prices. He's like, or increase bills, excuse me. He said, Biden is increasing my bills. And the second gentleman said, I don't want to say I regret it. That's harsh, but I wish there was another choice. So that goes to show you again how people are just not aware that there are other choices. And that's on purpose, right? Think about what he said. I wish there was another choice. Makes you wonder.
All right, so what does the president have to do to turn this around here? Well, according to one of the president's most outspoken supporters, he needs to do better with his messaging. Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina played a huge role in influencing black voters to support Biden back in 2020. Just this week, he expressed the need for the president and his campaign to do a better job at touting his big wins from his first term. That's also something we are hearing from voters here in South Carolina. As you mentioned, Henna, President Biden has a stop here in South Carolina later tonight.
Okay, we can finish that part there. That's a good point. Joe says, look at him telling Joe how to get us. That's exactly what he was doing, right? Jim Clyburn, that's exactly what he was doing there. But it's very telling. Notice that they're continuing with this trend of we have to do better with messaging. Did they not hear what the first black guy said when they interviewed him? Did they not hear him say, Biden just increasing my bills? So what is that? That has nothing to do with messaging. That has to do with him looking at his bills increasing over time. And I know the utility bills have increased. The utility bills have started increasing after this war with Russia and Ukraine started. So a lot of people have been paying a lot more than they usually do. And the grocery store prices have increased. The gas prices came down some, but everything else is still expensive. So what does that have to do with messaging? If that guy is telling you that under Joe Biden, his bills have increased, what message is that, right? But this falls under the category of white liberals. And I think you need to hear something that Malcolm X said a while back. And I've played this before, but it is very true. It's very true. When you think about that clip that I showed you of Joe Biden in the living room, eating the food, and he's like, oh, you got the fried chicken and all that kind of stuff. Think about that for a second and listen to this.
There are many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox, and a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to, but the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling and you take him for a friend. There are many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox, and a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to, but the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling and you take him for a friend.
That's your Joe Bidens. That's your Hillary Clintons. You know, when Hillary was running in 2016, she was on some hip hop podcast and she said, I got that hot sauce in my bag. And I just said to myself, like, really? Those are the ones that pretend like they're supportive of you. They'll virtue signal, they'll pander. The Nancy Pelosi's that kneel in kente cloth instead of actually removing the policies that continue to hurt people in your community, instead of actually implementing legislation that fix systemic issues. They just pander to you and virtue signal, but they don't actually do or give you anything. And you'll see other groups in this country don't have that problem because they actually ask for concessions for their vote. They don't just do it just because. Something to think about. Let me go to the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Duckzilla. Putin has recently said he'd rather see Biden win because he's more predictable. We're going to chime into that tomorrow. But yes, I saw that. Thank you, Drew. Barack weaponized the IRS too. Thank you, Real of Crypto. Sabby, unfortunately, our people only look at Obama's skin color, but don't pay attention to the politicals. Our blacks are blind to how Obama hurt the people. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things too, like when I tell people about what happened under Obama in reference to black wealth, a lot of times, like most people are surprised. Thank you, New York Varsity. OMG, stop. He's a vegetable. Thank you, Cool Blue. Are Biden staff and advisors the most incompetent? I don't know whose idea this was. Thank you, Timothy. This is an indication of what he thinks of us as a people. Exactly. Hey man, let me go. Let's go get some fried chicken for you. And let me take you to the basketball game. You want to go to the basketball game? Thank you, Jewel in the Machine. Does Joe carry hot sauce like HRC? The pandering is nauseating. Yeah, right. Be Easy says Black men are making their own decisions. We are not the puppets of Black women. Thank you for that, Be Easy. Thank you for saying that. I was gonna say, like, my dad, like, made his own decisions. Like, so it's kind of interesting to me that he said that Black men are afraid of Black women. I'm like, really? Thank you, Sparky. White Southerners eat plenty of fried chicken. The stereotype came from Blacks moving up north in large numbers before Southern whites. So Media Hub NYC associated fried chicken with Blacks. That is true. Also down south too, because I used to live in the Carolinas. This whole thing about, like, you know, collard greens and cornbread, like, particularly people tend to think this more up north, that's just like Black people food. If you go down south, you'll see, especially the ones that grew up there, you'll see a lot of times white Southerners actually eat those foods as well and make them. Thank you for the super sticker, Don G. Thank you, Will. Sabs for president 2028 if the world is still here. I will not run for president, Will, but thank you for that. And thank you, Cool Blue. News Nation is wrong. 2020 Blacks nationally gave Biden 87% versus Trump 12%. Oh, margin, Democrats plus 75 points. Source, Roper Center, 2024 Biden will likely underperform. Thank you for that, Cool Blue. Thank you. I wonder where they got that from. All right. I have a good news story for you, especially if you live in Michigan. Especially if you live in Michigan. We've talked before about the right to work. So I want to take you back to a time years ago when there was actually the right to work bill was passed in Michigan. Things have changed today, which will be good news for those of you that are employees in Michigan, particularly those of you that belong to unions. Now, this video here, this was 11 years ago when ABC News reported this change in Michigan. And then I'm going to show you the good news that happened this week.
That showdown raging in the heartland of the United States, perhaps no place in America more closely associated with unions than the state of Michigan. And today, thousands of union workers descended on the Capitol to protest a new law they believe could be an ominous signal for unions and worker paychecks everywhere. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
The anger boiling over. Officers turning to pepper spray to control the crowd, at least 10,000 deep. But it wasn't enough. Michigan Republican lawmakers approving landmark legislation lifting the requirement that workers in unionized workplaces pay union dues.
An army of officers in riot gear have been guarding the governor's office all day. Some of these demonstrators have been here since 5 o'clock this morning.
The Republican governor has signed the law.
To have him with a stroke of a pen take our rights away is offensive.
Supporters call it right to work, but unions say it's nothing less than an effort to cut their bargaining power. Less dues means less influence. The AFL-CIO says that the average worker in right-to-work states earns $1,500 less than workers in states without those laws.
So that piece right there is very important because oftentimes you hear that phrase right to work and it sounds like a positive thing, but what does that really mean, really, especially considering which state you live in? So right to work in Michigan, rules could be different from right to work in Massachusetts, for example. So what they found is that the right to work states, these workers were earning $1,500 less per year. So yeah, you have the right to work, but they were receiving less benefits. So when Michigan actually changed this law and made Michigan that right to work state, when that bill passed, the reason why people were out there protesting is they said, no, that means we're going to receive less benefits now. Again, this was 11 years ago.
These so-called right-to-work laws, they don't have to do with economics. They have everything to do with politics. What they're really talking about is giving you the right to work for less money.
But supporters say the law encourages business. Chris Beckering owns a construction company and predicts the bill will allow his company to hire more workers.
This will attract more businesses to Michigan. Those businesses will need space, and we're here to build it for them.
What's remarkable about what happened today is that it happened in Michigan, the heart of Union Country, home of the United Auto Workers. Now Michigan will become the 24th right-to-work state.
Okay. So that was when Michigan became the 24th right to work state. But notice what the gentleman said there at the end. He said, well, this will be great for the businesses because I can actually hire more people. Well, yeah, if you're giving the employees less benefits, of course, you're going to have more money to be able to hire more people. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. It's like, I could have more workers if I give you less benefits. That's really what he's saying. However, big change this week. Shout out to the peeps who live in Michigan. For More Perfect Union made this announcement. Today, Michigan is officially no longer a right to work state. Michigan is now the first state in nearly 60 years to ditch the union busting law. Public school workers can now collectively bargain. It's easier for unions to build power, and billionaires are furious. I don't know how many of you in the chat, or if any of you in the chat live in Michigan, but let's give a shout out to the peeps in Michigan. And they also go on to say here, learn more about this huge win and the great organizing that made it happen. And they're going back here to February 21st, 2023. And there's this video here. I already showed you the union fight there. But again, guys, this took years, right? It says the ability of public school teachers to collectively bargain was won through separate legislation, another great move among a host of Democratic victories since the party swept into power across Michigan legislature and governorship. So this is another example of local wins, right? Things that are actually happening on the local level. These are things I feel like we need to put more emphasis and more time into. That's why I cover the ballot initiatives on this show, because I want to show you what you can get done at the local level. When it comes to the national level, we don't really have control over that other than to vote out our congressmen, right? Vote out our representatives. But we don't really have control in reference to what the president does in the United States, right? But on the local level, some of these fights have been won. Now, I do want to show you guys, if you're not aware, what this actually meant. Michigan right to work repeal, what workers and businesses need to know. So let's come down here. And this actually was released on Valentine's Day, yesterday. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger because I don't like the small font. Here we go. Michigan workplaces are no longer governed by the right to work law, as the repeal took effect Tuesday of the decade-long regulation that allowed workers to opt out of paying dues in union-represented jobs, but still receive benefits. Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed the law on March 24th, 2023, months after Democrats won control of the governor's office, state Senate, and state House in November 2022 election. Repealing the law became one of the early policy priorities as Democrats eyed taking control of the legislature. The repeal passed along party lines in the House and in the Senate. The law is one of 142 that took effect on Tuesday, 3 months after the legislature adjourned. The repeal didn't get enough support to take effect immediately. So here's what you need to know. The law was approved by Republicans in a lame duck session in 2012. It banned requirements that workers join unions in order to receive their benefits. Democrats, who were backed heavily by unions, including the Michigan Education Association and the UAW, said the repeal prioritizes workers and labor rights. Right to work has negatively impacted the state. That's coming from House Speaker Joe Tate in Detroit. Now, what do both sides say? Labor groups argue right to work hurts workers' ability to organize by reducing dues for unions who need money to organize groups of employees. They also claim that wage growth is lower in states with right to work laws, which critics say is the goal of right to work. So you guys hear this? Critics say the goal of right to work is to make sure that they have lower wages. So that's important to know. Business advocates say the law helped economic development in Michigan, making it more attractive to national site selectors who evaluate locations for new business. When Democrats announced their intent to repeal the law, Michigan was one of the nation's 27 right-to-work states, many of which compete with the state for large-scale electric vehicle battery manufacturing, such as Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and North Carolina. Now, who is affected by the change? Only private sector employees. The repeal did not address the public sector. However, few changes are expected. Businesses that are union shops continue to partner with unions, and only a small percentage of union workers opt out of paying dues, the Detroit Chamber said on Tuesday. So, big news there for people who are in Michigan. Got to end with some good news. So congrats to you guys. Desert Mantis says right to work is a lie. Right. It's like you got the right to work for less. They forget that part. And Pi May says right to work for peanuts. There you go. So celebrate, Michigan. Celebrate. I'll take the comments on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. O's approval is high, but what generation are they polling? Thank you for this as well. No George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. No $2,000 checks. Migrants overwhelming Black communities. Yet they say messaging. This is consultant talk, Sabby, because they are not responsible for governing, only campaigning. This is what happens when you, where did I go here? Sorry. This is what happens when you are not grassroots based. Thank you for this as well. Sabby, what is sad is that Michiganders decided to wait until politician Dems to take over to do this. Again, depending on politicians. Michiganders have the power of veto referendum. They could have put that on the ballot 2 years ago to repeal the right to work. Run an initiative amendment ratifying right to collective bargaining into the Michigan Constitution. Stop depending on politicians if you don't have to. That is a really good point. This is something that they could have done via ballot initiative. That's a good point. Because I told you that video, the first one we played, that was over 11 years ago. So good point. Let's show that poll. How did you feel about the RFK Super Bowl ad? I'm curious to see this because the results were interesting before I went live. Okay, 1,365 votes. How do you feel about RFK Super Bowl's ad? 13% said it was great. 13% said it was bad. That is interesting. A tie. 44% said you didn't see it. And 30% said, I don't really care about it. Interesting. All right, guys. Okay, that is it. I'm out. I'll be back tomorrow night. And then I will be live this Sunday as well. So, I had chats. Oh, sorry about that. Thank you for the super chat, Anthony. Thank you, Sabby. Great show. Thank you. And thank you, Cool Blue. I live in Michigan. Gretchen Whitmer, who I will admit, maybe the most skilled Democratic office holder, is better than all Democrat alternatives to Biden. Interesting. All right, guys. Thanks so much. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.